At this time, Jiang Wenxi stopped laughing and continued, "Professor Wei, you also know that I am old. Now the 18 people who are buried with me have gathered together. I should thank you for helping me gather these people. Now, my rebirth array, oh no, longevity array, should be activated." But Jiang Wenxi deliberately left the words halfway. "But you are worried that Professor Wei's soul is immortal and will pose a threat to you sooner or later. You are also worried that if Professor Wei's soul is extinguished, the soul in the peaceful monument will come out and rob your 18 living burial objects," I continued. "A little classmate is still very smart." Jiang Wenxi looked at me in surprise and said sarcastically, "Professor Wei continued, you are worthy of being the principal. I didn't expect that you were behind such a big conspiracy. When you insisted on choosing this place to build a school 30 years ago, I should have thought of it, but I didn't expect you to be so cruel. What's the difference between you and the soul in the Peace Monument?" Jiang Wenxi said. "Professor Wei, you are too modest. With your intelligence, you must have known my plan back then, but you were too busy to do it." Professor Wei said, "What if I knew?" "I'm already dead." Jiang Wenxi said, "This is why I came to you. Over the years, I tried my best to get Professor Wei's soul out, just to make a deal with him. I have to thank this little classmate for this. If it weren't for him, I really couldn't let you go. It turned out that it was my mistake." I said why I couldn't find Professor Wei when I was saving the dead souls. Turned out that he was hijacked by Jiang Wenxi. I was so regretful. Why didn't I think of this level? Professor Wei continued, "Tell me, I need to see if the deal is worth it." "Great." Jiang Wenxi slapped the table and said, "The deal is simple. This time, these 18 people will help me live forever. You stay in the Harmony Monument and gather 18 more people to help that soul complete its rebirth." "What can I get?" Professor Wei asked. "I will choose another 18 people to help you come back to life." After Jiang Wenxi finished this sentence, he added, "You should know that this is the transaction with the least loss at present. Otherwise, more than these people will die. What if I don't agree to this deal?" Professor Wei slowly stood up from the sofa, and his tone became serious. Jiang Wenxi smiled, leaned back in his chair, and said lazily, "Then I will send you back to the Harmony Monument, and you will stay there with that soul for eternity, and will never be reincarnated." As he said this, Jiang Wenxi cast a spell, and Professor Wei suddenly disappeared. 13. Only Jiang Wenxi and I were left in the office. Jiang Wenxi watched Professor Wei disappear and cursed, "You old man, your ghost won't go away." Then he turned his head to me and said with a smile, "My little classmate, I was going to look for you. Now that you've come to my door, it's just right. Let's start with you. You should be honored. You are the most special among the 18 people." While talking to me, Jiang Wenxi turned around and opened the bookcase with pulleys behind him. A huge yellow cloth was revealed on the wall. A huge talisman was painted with gold powder on the yellow cloth. I could tell at a glance that the talisman of the rebirth array was improved, which should be Jiang Wenxi's longevity array. Jiang Wenqi walked to the talisman, pointed at the pattern below, and said, 18 people are 18 levels of hell. Let you go to the 18 levels of hell to suffer for me. Tell me, which level of hell do you want to choose? He laughed again and said softly, unfortunately, you have no choice. You can only go to the 18th level of hell. Do you know what hell is? It is a void space where everything is empty. You can only be trapped there forever and can't find a way out. I laughed and said, it's not certain who will go to hell. Little classmate, but you. Jiang Wenqi said contemptuously, now, let me show you how I can live forever. Jiang Wenqi walked to the wall and pulled off the talisman hanging on the wall. A huge black circle was revealed behind it, so dark that people couldn't see the bottom at a glance. I recognized that this was the center of the Harmony Monument, the Rebirth Road. He was going to activate the Rebirth Array. I rushed forward, intending to subdue him by force, but just as I took 2 steps, the office door was knocked open, and 2 big men rushed in, and without saying anything, they rushed over and pressed me to the ground. The 2 men held me tightly with their hands like pliers. I lay on the ground and struggled hard, but to no avail. I could only barely look up and see Jiang Wenqi standing tall. At this critical moment, the mobile phone in my clothes rang without warning. The ringing scared me. One of the big men took out my mobile phone, took a look, and threw it on the ground. I turned my head and saw that it was the dormitory head calling. Jiang Wenqi ignored all this and said to himself, you have no choice, only one death, and you will be buried with me. This is fate. Do you understand fate? He said as he walked towards the Rebirth Road with the black circle pressed against his chest. Since there is only one death, I can only use my big move to fight. I made up my mind and silently chanted the soul-binding spell while secretly exerting my strength. According to my plan, Jiang Wenqi and I were in the Harmony Monument made of this office building. When I finished chanting the spell 7 times, Jiang Wenqi's soul would be bound out, and my blood vessels would burst through the blood vessels in my brain, and I would die. At that time, my soul would be able to lock Jiang Wenqi's soul. In fact, before entering Jiang Wenqi's office, I had made up my mind to die. Just like Professor Wei, that is, to collect Jiang Wenqi's soul and lock it. Not letting him live forever, nor to let him. When I chanted the spell for the 5th time, I felt that my eyes were full of blood and my consciousness was a little blurred. At this time, I saw Jiang Wenqi standing in front of me, suddenly shook and almost fell. He quickly held onto the bookcase with both hands, and after a while, he saw me chanting a spell and hurriedly said to the man in black, "Stop his mouth." The 2 men in black both freed one hand and couldn't find anything to stop my mouth, so they punched me in the face. The hammer-sized fists almost made me faint, and the spell in my mouth stopped. Jiang Wenqi stood up straight and said fiercely, "Okay, little classmate. I didn't expect you to be so brave at such a young age, and you want to exchange your life for my own." I used the little consciousness I had to spit out the blood in my mouth and smiled reluctantly. Old monster. This is not exchanging lives. This is saving lives. I took a breath and I was just one last spell away. When I finished, Jiang Wenqi's 3 souls and 6 spirits left his body. And I also left my soul and suppressed him in the Monument of Harmony made of this building. Tai Wei Zhuan Palace, Zhanwang Shiking, internal refining of 3 souls, fetal light peace. Divine treasure, jade room, born with me. Just when I recited the last 2 sentences, my eyes gradually blurred. And I saw a black gas flashing in front of me and heading straight for Jiang Wenqi. Jiang Wenqi screamed and fell to the ground. The moment he fell to the ground, I lost consciousness, but I shouted 2 words clearly. No, 14. No, no. I shouted frantically, but found that I woke up like a nightmare. I opened my eyes in a daze, and a ray of light shot towards me. I looked up and found that this place was very unfamiliar, with dim sunlight, cramped space, and broken stairs. Is this the Heki Monument? Is this the staircase leading there? I moved my body, and I felt sore all over, and my face was swollen. I touched my face, it was wet, and put my hand in front of my eyes. It was all blood. Am I still alive? I looked around quickly and suddenly saw the rusty iron door behind me. Isn't this the door of Professor Wei's house? Why am I sitting here? I was clearly in Sun Wenqi's office just now. Just as I was wondering, my cell phone rang. I took out my cell phone, and it was the head of the dormitory calling. I raised the phone weakly. Gaio, where are you? Why don't you answer the phone? I'm so worried. What's wrong? Head of the dormitory. I thought of the cell phone that was just thrown away by the 2 big men, and I didn't know how to answer for a while. You kid, you didn't come back to the dormitory all night. Did you go out to fool around with your girlfriend? No. Didn't you stay in the dormitory last night? That's nonsense. Everyone was in the dormitory last night, but you didn't come back. I guess you went out all night. The dormitory head laughed. By the way, I called to tell you to be careful when you are outside. Something weird happened just now. Senior brother Chin from the dormitory opposite, he was fine, but suddenly went crazy. Scratched his skin with both hands, and it was bleeding. Don't you think it's weird? Senior brother Chin? Didn't he die last night? What are you talking about? Who died? Nothing. How is senior brother Chin now? Strange. He suddenly got better, like nothing happened. The dormitory head was still talking, but I already understood. Last night, senior brother Qin's death must have been a false illusion set up by Professor Wei, forcing me to fight with my back to the wall, with no way out. Brother Qin went crazy at this time because Jiang Wenqi activated the rebirth array, and the one who was fighting with Jiang Wenqi in the principal's office was my soul. Was it my soul? Maybe it was a dream, but I know it was not a dream, because on that morning, the whole school received a notice that the founding father of the school, the principal of our school, and the famous architect Professor Jiang Wenqi had a sudden cerebral congestion and died at his post. It is said that when Jiang Wenqi died, his eyes were wide open, as if he was alive. At the same time, there was a dark circle on the chest of his body, and no one knew what it was.